Someone asked me to do a video about my thoughts of CM Punk working with Marvel Comics. Again. You're probably thinking what I mean again. He actually did do the foreword for Avengers vs. X-Men hardcover. So he's done work with them in the past. I think he was at a convention and he got to meet Stan Lee. He thought that was one of the coolest things ever. He's a big comic fan. Of course, he's now going to write a small story in Thor Annual #2. Very little's known about it. Sounds interesting. You know, could be pretty cool. I made the offhand comment. I'd like to see what he does if he ever gets to write the Thing. If you ever watch CM Punk's intro, you know, he kind of goes down, kind of like, you know, plays around with the ground, kind of does like a little bit of what you saw Russell Crowe doing Gladiator. And then you see him, you know, listen to a watch, and then he screams out a phrase. It's clobbering time. He did that, I think, pretty much every single time he came down, once he was allowed to be more of himself. It's clobbering time is, of course, the battle cry for the ever-loving blue-eyed Thing. I think in an interview, CM Punk did mention that's actually one of his more favorite characters. And think about it. The guy's got a gruff exterior, but kind, sweet heart of gold. Maybe that's CM Punk kind of saying, you know, I look like a scary individual, but I'm actually pretty cool. Unless you piss me off, at which point then I'm just going to, you know, smash you through a wall. So CM Punk writing comics. He is a comic fan. If you've read AJ Lee articles, she has mentioned that her husband buys her graphic novels. So he reads comics. AJ reads comics, which means, of course, they probably discuss comics. Which would make sense. CM Punk, he's a name. This also would allow him to go to a place like Wizard World, which he can do if he wants to anyways. And you know, he could be there as the WWE superstar, someone who works for Marvel, that guy you see on The Talking Dead all the time. He does a lot with comics normally. The 2 times he's been on AMC, 2 times, 3 times? I know he's been on at least twice for The Talking Dead. He's a huge fan of that show. Great insight. I think he'll be pretty good when it comes to writing a comic. They even mentioned that he had to do like the actual the storyboarding for it. So he went through the actual Marvel process of here's how you do a story. From what I've read, he said he enjoyed it. You know, and of course, if it sells well, people like it. It gets good buzz. You know, he could work on other small little projects here and there. Do I see him taking over a book and just running with it? I don't know. There are a lot of people who work in comics that are also wrestling fans. Also wrestlers who work in the world of comics. If you're a fan of luchadors have this beautiful, larger-than-life persona. Big, bright, colorful costumes. They are essentially living superheroes. That's part of the mystique and part of the reason why people like Mystico. Or as we would know him as Sin Bacha or Sin Cara Numero Uno. Now, he actually had a comic book. Jerry the King Lawler does a comic book. When I used to go to Shimmer events, there's a guy who actually does, is it Ring Angels? He actually does a comic book based upon female wrestlers. You know, Mick Foley has done work with Jerry Lawler to do some of the wrestling comics. So it makes sense. You know, it is very much, it's a niche market with larger-than-life people that still have a somewhat human grounding element to it. If you wanted to look at, we'll keep CM Punk as an example. You have CM Punk. Then you got Phil Brooks. CM Punk with Phil Brooks as the alter ego. Now that he's essentially retired, CM Punk at an event would probably get a photo with you. CM Punk away from that is Phil Brooks. Phil Brooks doesn't want to be bothered. Well, okay, CM Punk is the Batman. Phil Brooks is the Bruce Wayne. People that ask Bruce Wayne for an autograph or a picture. People probably wouldn't ask Batman for a picture. But I don't want to call CM Punk Superman, because that's John Cena. Anyways, I think he'll do a pretty interesting job. He's got a good head on his shoulders. When he was able to write his own stuff in the WWE, great. He knows how to write and how to capture an audience. How well that will translate to the written word, hard to tell. The people who have been the most prolific speakers have also gone to write some pretty solid books. You know, a buddy of mine, he'd read Foley's books, Jericho's books, and he was like, great books. Because it's somebody who knows how to take what's up here and here. Knows how to take the ideas that are here, make it palatable and acceptable either verbally or in the written word. So I'm looking forward to what he's going to do. Might I pick it up? I might flip through it. I'm not super sold on Thor. Sure, it's chick Thor, whatever you want to call it, or Thor asterisk female Thor. The new Thor. I mean, people call Frog Thor Thor. All people call him Frog Thor. So it could be interesting. You know, if that leads to him having a really unique post-wrestling experience of being someone who's going to be writing comics. Cool. I wish him all the best in the world.